All right, good Monday afternoon, everyone. Thanks for stopping by for a check of your forecast. Hope everyone's doing well today. It is a little cool out there, but that's a big change compared to where we've been. We've actually been pacing at like the hottest or second hottest November on record up until yesterday. So the cooler days, certainly a welcome sight. Hopefully, going to get us away from maybe top 10 on record, but it's certainly going to be close. We do have some colder weather on the way for the next few days, but will still probably be potentially a top 10 finish for warmest Novembers since 1892 for us here in Amarillo. We're taking a live look outside at our sky cam there in Bushland. You can see a couple of those fair weather cumulus clouds on November 24th, year of our Lord 2025. We are expecting some cooler weather for Thanksgiving week. It's going to be quiet weather as well, so not really expecting any big changes in the forecast between now and this Friday, but as we move into the weekend. And in particular, next week, we are really focused on a major shift in the upcoming weather pattern. And that is something that we will have to break down a little bit as we get into the first part of December. Looks like maybe a really significant cool down coming even for us here in the Texas Panhandle. So you can see that storm system that brought us the rain yesterday. It actually had about a half inch of rain here in Amarillo with that, secondary bonus shower and storm that came through late at night. We even had a little bit of some hail with that one and some gusty winds. That one had some really, really high rain rates there on the south side of town just before midnight. But again, it was nice to see the moisture. Really, everyone had some rain, but for the most part, those totals were on the light side under a half inch. But a few of us did get past a half inch of rainfall. There's a big cluster of showers and storms now moving through East Texas. There was a confirmed tornado there around Cypress earlier this afternoon around 1:30. That has since lifted and continued to fade away, but still the severe weather threat remains down there in the Arklatex region for the next couple of hours as those storms move through. Let's jump back real quick, actually. You can see our next cold front here on the Viper radar and water vapor imagery. You can see it here kind of moving through Las Vegas, New Mexico, or rather Nevada. I'm going to get used to saying New Mexico with it, that other town out there closer to home. But there's that cold front. It's going to be a more of a drier air mass that rather than any truly cold air. We're going to have some pretty chilly mornings. In fact, we will probably be below freezing, if not tomorrow. We will be on Tuesday night and Wednesday night. We'll fall down into those mid 20s and maybe even some upper teens for a few of us. So it will be a cold start, but the afternoons won't be too bad moving through the next couple of afternoons. So let's take a look at temperatures now. 61 here in Amarillo, 57 in the Oklahoma Panhandle, 70 degrees in Cottle County. Here's a look at those winds. They're out of the northwest around 5 to 15, or rather 10 to 20 miles per hour. They're at 5 to 15 over in eastern New Mexico. And then our next story will be, again, aside from the subtle front tonight into tomorrow morning, there's another front coming through this weekend, and we'll be really watching that colder air early next week. But this is tomorrow afternoon. You can see it's kind of cool. Winds out of the northeast at 5 to 15, 46 at 6 p.m. We'll be lucky, I think, to get up into those low 50s for an hour or two on Tuesday. So temperatures will run about 5 to 10 degrees below normal. Very cold start on Wednesday morning. You can see a lot of us down into those 20s. Winds will be fairly light, so wind chills won't be too far away from what the thermometer reads, but still feeling like the teens probably when you open the front door. And then highs returning slowly to the upper 40s and low 50s there on Wednesday as well before another cold start to your Thursday on Thanksgiving. So here's our next weather maker. This is really what we're focused on. There's a lot of uncertainty in this, and we'll kind of break down the differences on what each model talks about here in a bit. But you can see the GFS forecast, or the American model, has got a relatively stout ridge of high pressure kind of over the central Gulf. That's going to be a key on if that does come to fruition and we do get a closed upper level low down here, or even just a big open wave trough out across the West Coast. We're going to be in this window where it could be a fairly active weather pattern moving into that first few days of December. Really kind of watching Tuesday right now in particular. That could be the day where the most unsettled weather kind of happens. Now, when I say unsettled weather, because we don't know if it's going to be winter weather or if it's going to be a dry slot with higher winds, or if we inevitably are just too warm for any kind of winter weather, but we're still below normal for temperatures and it's just a cold rain. So there's a lot of scenarios that still could unfold for us early next week. I think the broad theme is temperatures are going to be below normal. We're just talking about or trying to really pinpoint how cold it's going to be. The Climate Prediction Center is starting to grow ever so confident that we will be below average, and we could be significantly below average depending on which model output you're staring at. Now, I do want to again encourage you guys to be very cautious with what kind of content you're consuming over the next couple of days. The exact potency of this cold air is very much in question. There have already been a lot of what we like to call social meteorologists out there that like to hype up and do some fear mongering, just showing you kind of the worst case scenarios. They find one deterministic model that's got an extreme swing in temperatures, or it's got some kind of extreme winter weather event unfolding, and they use this as their propaganda to try and get you guys to click, like, and share. And I just want to talk about more of the ensembles. This is a better way to get a gauge from that 7 to 14 day time frame, because you're getting a general average, not those outlier scenarios like you sometimes see. But the consensus is we will be colder than normal. Just how cold is still something that's, again, a bit unknown, but there's a pretty wide swing in what our lower temperatures could be with this next blast of cold air. We think it could be pretty cold. We may even be cold enough where we have a prolonged period below freezing, but just how far below 32 still also remains to be seen. There's a few models that are outliers out there that have us into the single digits and maybe even some wind chills below zero. That's the extreme case. The other side of that are the cold front's not as potent as it is expected, and we're still in the 40s for high temperatures. And if we do see moisture, obviously it's not going to be cold enough for winter weather. So there's a lot of uncertainties. There's not a very good consensus on what exactly to expect next week. I think it's going to be an active pattern, but the nitty-gritty details are still unknown this far out. But the precipitation outlook is growing a little bit higher. And again, given the placement of the trough and the ridge that we showed you just a minute ago, I would venture to believe that moisture is going to be present in the atmosphere. We just have to bullseye on how cold the temperatures are going to be at the surface, and if we have what we call a warm nose above our heads. A warm nose is just a warm layer of air aloft that's warmer than the temperature below it. In the wintertime, usually it has to do with temperatures above freezing versus below freezing when we talk about a warm nose, and that can be very pivotal on what kind of precipitation we see getting to the surface. With southwest flow, that's a big problem for us because we are east of the desert southwest. So we usually get that Pacific moisture to bring in some warmer weather as well above our heads. And if it's above freezing, that can be a big wrench thrown into the forecast on if we get snow, sleet, freezing rain, or just a cold rain. And again, that also has to do with how cold we'll be at the ground level as well. But I would say that moisture probably looking more and more likely. It's just a matter of how cold we're going to be. So I do want to show you the ensemble probabilities for certain thresholds of snow. This is the latest guidance that we have this afternoon. These numbers are still probably going to be subject to change heading into next week. Now, if you've seen some of those fear-mongering posts about a big winter storm or a big ice storm in the South Plains next week, take that with an extremely heavy dose of salt. This is what the ensembles are spitting out for us. So what an ensemble is it's basically the European model run 50 different times with the parameters tweaked just ever so slightly at the initialization of the run. So some of those parameters could be the temperature, could be the pressure, could be the exact place or strength of a low. And those are just tweaked ever so slightly, and then they simulate that forecast over the next 300 plus hours, and you basically get a bunch of different scenarios on what could happen over the next 2 weeks. So the European model has 50 members in its ensemble. And so we've right now, 60% of the ensembles show Amarillo getting at least a tenth of an inch of snow through about Thursday morning of next week. So there's 40% of them that don't actually reach that threshold of us even having measurable snow through next week. So this is why we tell you to take those extreme outlier scenarios that some people are posting with a huge grain of salt, because 2/3 of what we see don't show us having any moisture that's in the form of snow at all. I will say there's a higher probability that we have precipitation, but not all of it being snowfall. If you get over to the GFS and the Canadian ensembles, they're even lower on the confidence level on if we're going to see measurable snow to begin with. And those chances are relatively low at 25 to about 40%. For Amarillo, our criteria to get to winter weather advisory is at least an inch of snow through a 24-hour period. And for that, ensembles have even lower confidence. There's only a few members that actually have that threshold being achieved at around 10 to 25%. So right now, odds are we are probably going to fall below 1 inch of snowfall should we try and lock down a forecast today. These numbers, again, are still going to change as models come into better agreement, and then you can basically almost discount any kind of winter storm warning criteria being met for snowfall based off of ensemble outputs. There was only one European member run and one American run that had us getting more than 5 inches of snow, where a vast majority of them didn't even reach close to that threshold or that criteria. So again, that's just another way to look at it. This is a good way to kind of take the general idea of what's expected in that 7 to 14 day window and give you a general idea rather than just trying to jump to conclusions there, even though we are over 180 hours out from seeing this potential forecast verify. We've got a lot more confidence in the colder weather next week. You can see on our 7 day forecast, we have you at 53 on Saturday with a 20% chance for some what we're going to call flurries. I don't think it's going to be measurable precipitation if we do see something on Saturday, but that cold front could be strong enough to provide some low level lift that maybe we get some spitting snow, especially in the northern half of the panhandles. I don't think it's going to be measurable though. If it is, it's going to be a dusting at best. So don't get your hopes up on anything meaningful this weekend after Black Friday. Monday, there's very low confidence that we see moisture that day. That's why that chance is only 10%, but it's not something we can discount entirely. So that pop remains in there. I still think Tuesday, if we're going to see winter weather, probably will be the day of a higher opportunity if it's going to happen. So that's just outside of that 7 day forecast window. But look at that temperature on Monday, 36 degrees for the high. I think that's a general average about what we can expect for our high temperatures. There are some solutions that are a bit warmer than that. There's also solutions that are colder than that potentially keep us below freezing to start next week. If you get on the kind of stronger guidance of that colder air, some models say that we might stay below freezing for a few days next week. And that's also going to hinge on if we get winter weather on the ground too. If we have snow and a snowpack, that's really going to have a big impact on our high temperatures for the couple of days following a winter weather event, should we end up seeing one verify next week. So that'll be another thing to factor into that forecast as we get closer. For now, temperatures going to be probably below average and maybe even significantly below normal for a day or two next week can be expected. As far as precipitation is concerned, there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of variables that still have to come in line for that to play out. And so I think we'll have a better idea by Friday, by the end of this week, on if we're going to see some kind of winter weather set up next week. And so we should have some better details to maybe talk about too. But I don't want to jump to conclusions on that stuff just yet. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Should be a pretty quiet Thanksgiving for us.